Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to Market Insight. I am Dilusha Gamage. The listed entities of a country and their corporate actions plays a major role for the development of capital markets. While we are trying to understand and get a better insight about the capital market, it's extremely important to understand the listed entities and their corporate actions as well. Therefore, today we have decided to invite a Chief Executive Officer of a listed entity to Market Insight. We are extremely privileged to have Mr. Riyaz Sangani, the Chief Executive Officer of Vidullanka PLC with Market Insight today. Hello Riyaz, welcome to Market Insight.
Thank you.
Riyaz, just to start the conversation, let me ask you, what exactly made you to involve with the renewable energy sector? Because you are a founder of Vidullanka as well.
Well, okay, it was not all about renewable, it was all about hydropower, which is part of renewable energy. So what happened was, I think during my school days, the Mahavali Accelerated Development Program was in full force, and in school and things we used to hear a lot about the Mahavali Accelerated Program. So it was always on the news, and even when at school, when you had to write an essay, they will ask us to write about hydropower, or about Mahavali. So that got me interested in. And then it was a coincidence that when I was at the university, one of my colleagues from Vidyaship, they built the first mini hydropower plant in 1998. So, sorry, 1996. So, and I happened to visit that, and then it got me very curious and I thought it's a good business to go. And that time I looked at it as a hydropower, not as renewable energy. So, together with him, I started our first hydropower plant. And from beginning it was a capital intensive, so we had to get a few people to put in money. I did most of the fundraising, and my colleague who was more on the technical side, he did the design and development, and that's how we started off. But to say the start was not that great, a lot of learning, but all that experience I think went into build Vidullanka later on. And now we realize, okay, we are not only a hydropower company, but we have a big industry of renewable energy. So now we are looking at all other sources of renewable energy and developing our company.
Okay, so that means you have a long history of and experience in the sector. How long does it run back to?
Well, the first project was commissioned in 2001. Okay. So we are talking more than 2 decades.
All right, great. And Riyaz, if I may ask you that running a private entity, because when you started with Vidullanka, it was a privately held company, and later on it was a listed entity. And when you were running, when being a CEO of private company and listed company, what kind of differences you are seeing in the running of it?
Okay, like I told you, when I started though, it was capital intensive, so I had to raise fund, debt and equity. Equity was from number of sources. So from beginning we had a number of shareholders. It was not singly held. So like a listed company, we had a few shareholders, not as many as now. So from since we had many shareholders, it was very natural step to get it listed. So the difference I see is in a private company is that there is less reporting. In a listed company, you have more reporting and you have more responsibility, more stakeholders. So I think the pressure for performance is more, so which I think is a good thing,
Okay, so Vidullanka has recently announced a rights issue, and I think recently, a few days back, you had the EGM to get shareholder approval as well. And how was your experience of raising further capital as a listed entity in the Colombo Stock Exchange?
Well, this is not the first time we have done a right issue. Couple of times we have gone through it. So right issue is something which we try through the right. We also try to give a benefit to the existing shareholders. So we kind of price the right at attractive price, whereby the existing shareholders get shares at a discount. So I think the shareholders are happy to subscribe for it. So experience wise, I think getting the regulatory approvals takes a little while. a lot of time people say, okay, it's now speeded up, but this time also it took us couple of months. But same time, if you ask the CSE, they will say, okay, certain documents are not there, so somebody else has to see what really is the issue. But other than, that's not a major difficulty. I think it can be done without a problem. Yeah.
So how was the support from stock exchange and SEC, the regulators, for the
Well,
rights
I think
issues?
CSE and SEC, more than support, their role is a regulator, so you can't expect a big support from them. CSE is a facilitator, so I think they are playing that role. I don't see a problem with that.
Okay. So, Riyaz, now if we take the last 10 years, we have seen the listed companies have in fact grown in terms of profitability and growth. There was a growth, but when you take the capital market per se, the stock exchange, we have seen a lot of volatilities in the market development. And why do you think this is happening? What is the difference, and what are the factors affect for the market to perform differently?
I think it's very common knowledge. Everybody says political uncertainty. Whenever there is some political certainty, I think you see the market going up. Now recently, soon after the election, there was a majority government and the market started moving up. So I think it's a signal which the political body gives to the market makes a difference. Of course, there are other factors, but I think that's one of the major factors. Then talking about company growth, I think yes, maybe many companies will have grown. I can't exactly say I can talk about our company. Now, if you look at our company in 2015, I think the share price was about 6 rupees, and we have doubled our capacity and increased our profitability also maybe twice. But today the price is 550. So I think companies. So if I take my company as an example, yes, definitely the profitability has grown, capacity has grown, but the market, the price valuations has not grown as much.
So how does it
So it
affect
must
you?
be all due to how people perceive. At the moment, of course, there's a lot of money which has gone out of the country. The foreign investors have gone up, so that might be a major effect, and that may be due to the country rating. So I think country rating will have also major effect. So when there is a valuations are low, then the issue becomes is for a listed company when it's raising capital, it has to raise capital at a discounted price, which means that leads to a dilution for the existing shareholders. So those are not good factors when it comes to raising capital. People don't like to get diluted, and people don't want to sell when the valuations are low. So it's always good to have higher valuation. Yeah, that is a factor of if the market valuations are higher, generally company valuations also become higher.
Now let's say this period from 2015 to 2019, kind of a dark period for the capital market. We have seen a lot of volatilities, the markets were coming down, and when that kind of a situation is there as a listed company, you might see that the IPOs and raising capital is becoming extremely difficult, and at that time period an IPO was kind of something that we were never heard of. And as a CEO of a listed company, were you concerned about this kind of situation? Does it make you a little not so comfortable?
If you look at 15 and 16, initially valuations are good. I think after that only people lost faith in the government, and then the valuation starts going down. Yes, you're right. There were hardly any IPOs in 2017. If I remember, 18 there was no IPO at all. So IPOs were very less. So I guess IPO people don't want to sell when the valuations are low. Now if you look at in 2010, when the market valuations were high, so many IPOs came. So IPOs generally go down when the valuation knowledge. Now with regard to how it concerns us, well, we were focused on our business and we continued our business, and like I told you, we were growing. So we were not so particularly concerned because we didn't really need to raise any capital at that time. So I think when valuations are higher, we look at equity. When the valuations are low like that, we look at debt, provided that debt also the rates are good. So it doesn't, I mean, if the things are bad, we focus on the business and keep growing. We don't worry too much about it,
So, how do you think things could have changed, and what kind of improvements from the market perspective, or the regulators, or the political scenario, how things could have changed to prevent such situation probably in the future?
To prevent such, I think the political authorities have their own agenda. So it is when they are, I mean, they must make sure they run show consistency and there's political stability. So I think they will be more worried about their own political stability more than the market. So if they try to create that political stability, naturally that will reflect in the market. The regulator CSCC, I'm not sure whether they can do anything very much, but maybe certain maybe certain consistency in policy could help, like say the consistency in the tax rates and things. Those and all could prevent some level of uncertainty in the market. So I think the government policy has to be stable. If it's stable, that also at least that should be there. If there's no political stability, at least that should be there. If that is there, then the market, I think, may perform better.
So what you mean is, like, when the political party changes, our policies also change. That is the consistency.
Policies also, yes, it changes, and also we need a majority government. When it's a majority government is there, I think the political certainty is more,
Okay, so with that, I think maybe when the policies are consistent, that is good for the country as well as businesses as well, like for your business, even the same situation.
Yeah, when politics, like we gave an example, if you look at Singapore, their tax rate has been the same for so long time. But if you take our tax rate within the last 5-6 years has changed many times. So on those sort of things, I think we need certainty.
Great.
Now these days also, I think there's a difficulty of taking currency out of the country, overseas. When those sort of things happen, then the foreigners get jittery. So those sort of things, there should be some certainty in foreign investments and things.
Okay, so with that, let's take a small break and come back. You are in the conversation with Market Insight, and today we are with Mr. Riyaz Sangani, the CEO of Vidullanka PLC. Welcome back to Market Insight, and we are in the discussion with Mr. Riyaz Sangani, the CEO of Vidullanka PLC. Riyaz, now Sri Lanka is usually dominated by, let's say, a savings culture, and people are more towards fixed deposits and savings. Now, if we take a country like India, the closest country, the situation is quite different. They are even, like, from small days, they are going into equity markets, share investments, or listed securities, listed debentures. So there is this tendency in other countries. But in Sri Lanka, the equity markets and investing in shares is something not very much heard of. Why do you think, where do you think we have gone wrong?
Well, I think it's a cultural thing. I think people prefer certainty over uncertainty. So people generally go for things where they are certain. Now, some time ago I have seen some index on entrepreneurship. Sri Lanka's percentage of entrepreneurs as a percentage of the labor force, Sri Lanka's number of entrepreneurs as a percentage of labor force is around 3%. But if you take some other countries, Indonesia is about 11%. Bangladesh is also around 11-12 if I remember right. Thailand was about 27%. So I think Sri Lankan culture is such that people want certainty. So I think for now entrepreneurship to be low, maybe it's an indication again that people don't want to take that risk and things like that. Now if you see my experience is a lot of people in Sri Lanka prefer government jobs. Why they go for government job? Because they want certainty. So I think it's a cultural thing that we are more towards certainty than uncertainty. So that sort of thing has to be, if it has to be changed, then it has to be changed at a very early age, maybe at the schooling level, people are taught more entrepreneurship. If that sort of change happens from a young age, maybe people will go into more willing to take more risk, then maybe they will go into equity investment and things. So I think we need to change the mindset of people to get them to take risks, be entrepreneur, then maybe we can get more participation in the equity market.
So, but at the moment, Riyaz, we are living in an era where the interest rates are very low. But if you look at the stock market, certain stocks are dividend yielding in a rate higher than the fixed deposit rates. But still, we don't see much of people taking off their fixed deposits and investing in the market. So, where do we have to improve? What has to be changed to change this situation?
Yeah, today interest rates are low, but I think this has happened after quite some time. So people have been got used to a good interest income. I think there were times when we were getting 25% also. So people have all got used to it. So I think it will take a while to change that feeling. But today I think interest rates are too low. I think there's definitely a good case for people to get into equity market. And like you said, I'm sure there are certain companies the dividend yields are much higher than the interest rate. So how to change? I think it's a big cultural shift, and maybe certain level of education and things has to have taken place. And maybe we need to get out of the culture where people are all running behind government jobs. Then we need to reduce that sort of a culture. Maybe once they get into that sort of certainty, they get so used to it, they get into that comfort zone, they don't want to move out at all. So we have to need to prevent them getting into that comfort zone. So I think a lot needs to be done on that, to get people more interested in equity markets.
So, as a CEO of a listed company, would you advise people to invest in the stock market?
I will say to invest, but of course with a caveat, you have to be cautious. My advice would be, okay, invest in industry where you know. Again, stock market is like a business. So if you are getting into a business, you need to know the business, and you have to have certain level of competitive advantage. So how do you get a competitive advantage in a stock market? Maybe then you'll have to identify certain industries, learn about it, and then invest. Naturally for me, if I'm investing, I know quite a bit about the renewable energy industry, and I'll be more competent to play in those shares than any other industry. I will know when I can expect a dividend. I know when the incomes are going up, going down. So likewise, anybody invests in the share market should select the industry he is comfortable with, which he will know, and then maybe focus on that industry. Make sure you are fully aware what is happening, and then invest. Then I think you will be taking calculated risk, and I'm sure then you can make money in the market.
So, how will they benefit? In what ways?
Okay, they will benefit in terms of, I will always advise to invest in companies which dividends are good. So whereby you always have a certain cash flow. Invest for the cash flow, so that if you have to hold for a long time, even you have some return coming. So if you invest for cash flow, you will always have some money coming in, and when there's a capital gain, you can exit and make a capital gain. So to answer that, I think they can gain in terms of dividends and capital gains by taking calculated risk and investing in industries where they have some knowledge.
Okay. So, Riyaz, if I take your focus to investment banking side of the country at the moment, now the investment banking is, do you think it is at a level that it has to perform now? Because in Sri Lanka we have a lot of CFAs and accounting professionals, but the investment banking actions per se is not very active. We are seeing few transactions here and there, few per year, and it's not performing at a level that it has to be. What are your thoughts about the investment banking sector of the country?
Okay, you say they are not performing well. I cannot endorse that, or I can't say no also, because I know little about it, not the industry I mean. But I have seen certain transactions taking place, but I think and I think there are a number of investment bankings. So I think during the last 4-5 years, when there were no IPOs, no mergers, no foreign investment coming in, obviously I think they will have less role to play. But in a market has to be vibrant also, I think, for the investment bankers to play a role. So I can't say whether they are performing, underperforming. I'm not sure of that because I have not done any assessment of it. But I think in a vibrant market, I'm sure they will play a bigger role.
Yes, now recently Vidullanka has entered into a joint venture with Windforce, which is the newest entry to the market. And now Windforce is another company in the same industry. So how do you take this synergy, that because it's a rather company that you would have competed with otherwise? How do you see the synergies by working together?
We will believe in live and grow together, you know. Well, with Windforce, this is not our first joint venture. Actually, from beginning, we have had 2 other projects which we are joint ventures with. So our relationship goes long way, and I believe we have a certain expertise in hydro which we can bring to the table. Likewise, I think they are far ahead of us in wind and solar, which they can bring to the table. So I think it's good that both of us get together, we can grow together. And definitely there may be some competition, but if you also look at another perspective, we are all not dealing with the CB. For us, there are a lot of and the same institutes like the CA, Ministry of Power. So there are a lot of things we need to work together to get the best out of those. So there are times we are competing, and there are times we are best of friends also.
Okay. So as you touched upon CEB, now these entities like the state-owned enterprises like CEB. No, CEB is a entity that you are dealing with a lot. Do you think these state-owned enterprises has to be listed in the stock market? Do they have to come on public?
I firmly believe that, because I think a lot of these SOEs have a lot of inefficiencies, maybe to political interference, bureaucracy. To overcome that, I am sure the listing will help, because listing will create more transparency and more accountability. It won't happen overnight, but I am sure those companies will become more efficient, less bureaucratic once they go into the market, and there will be less political interference. So I totally endorse that they should go into it. Now, for example, I know at CB didn't happen. We have noticed many times it's a place for politicians to get jobs for their people. Now, when these are listed, at least that sort of interference will get less, because it becomes very apparent when these things comes out. So I think getting these SOEs listed, I firmly believe it's a very good way. It will benefit the country and benefit the industries also.
How will it change the dynamics for you, like the companies in the energy sector?
Well, when they become more efficient, then it can be a problem for us also, but I look at the overall perspective. I think if they do well, I'm sure we'll also do well. Decision making can be much faster. Now, even now, recent past, when CB floated tenders, it takes a long time for evaluations and things like that. So the culture there has to change, and that can change when it becomes a dynamic organization, and that dynamism can come through by getting listed and become more transparent and more accountable.
And Riyaz, as you correctly touched upon at the beginning, now in the stock market, the patience also plays a major role for investors. And now, currently, we are experiencing a sort of situation where with the digitization, there's a lot of youngsters getting into the market because of this digitization process. And do you think this generation is extremely different from the fundamentally driven market earlier, and how will it affect the stock market?
Well, digitization definitely helps in a lot of ways. For example, we used to earlier have to publish annual reports. Then it was CDs. Now you don't need to do a CD. You can give a QR code, which actually helps with your. I mean, it's an unnecessary expense. It saves money, and I think there are people who are. Happy to use digital platform to get all this information. But you must also be aware. My experience, there are a lot of investors, retail investors in the market, who are who are at elder age, retired people. They are not so happy to shift. So I think we need to also be careful to cater for them also. But digitization, I think all companies are adapting it. It leading to more efficiency. So I think it's a way to go, but be cautious of those retail investors who are having difficulty to adapt into this sort of ways.
So how can we reach out to them? What needs to be done? Does it more awareness would help, or do we have to cater them without digitization by going with the traditional way?
Awareness will help, but I think a lot of them are not going to change so easily. So you will have to have some provision for them. But now recently when we did our rights issue, now the shares are, we are not sending the allotment letters, all are getting lodged directly into the CDS. All those are, I think, cost saving and less administration, so those are good things, but be concerned about the people who are finding it difficult to adapt immediately to this.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we are going into a small break, and we are in the discussion with Mr. Riyaz Sangani, the CEO of Vidullanka PLC. Welcome back to Market Insight. We are in the discussion with Mr. Riyaz Sangani, the CEO of Vidullanka PLC. Riyaz, now we just touched upon the digitization process. Now with that, there is a whole new generation of investors coming into the market, and they are not following the broker advisors, the investment advisors. So they are going with their own gut feeling, and they trade online, and they do all these things by themselves. Do you think this is a welcoming situation for the stock market, or it can be detrimental for the fundamentally driven market which we had earlier?
I don't see anything can go wrong with it. I can see only it can be a good. So there'll be more information gathering, more information sharing. So then people are investing with some knowledge. So when the people invest, good shares will go up, and that's good for the country. I think that's good for the market when the good shares, people are aware what are the good shares, which are for growth oriented shares, and people invest for it. So I think the money will go into the right shares. So I think those are all good things. I don't see a problem, because it's whether it's digitization or whatever, or social media, it's end of the day the end result is sharing information. The more information you have, the better decision, and better decision means it will lead to the right thing, the right results what you want.
So what about these advisors we are getting on social media, with YouTube channels, and on social media with technical graphs? There are a whole lot of people who are giving investment advice through social media. So this new generation of investors, as well as the traditional investors, do they have to follow these, or when they follow these, what kind of advice you would give them?
I think the good, like I said, it's good to have information, but of course overload of information is also a problem, and you should be sure that information you're getting is from a right source, and it's from a right source. Yeah? So if you use the information correctly, I don't see a problem with it. Now I think recently this WhatsApp group started by Imtiaz Buhardin. I think a lot of information is getting shared, and I'm part of the group, and I think I'm getting useful information and useful ideas, thoughts, and I think that is helping the market. So I think I don't see a problem with it.
Okay, so Riyaz, also as a CEO of a listed company, why you are looking at only the stock market in Colombo Stock Exchange? If you have the option to look at probably a market outside the country, would you take that chance?
I think that is on our cards, but we need to be of a certain size to go overseas. So the plan is there. Hopefully, I'm hoping it will happen sooner than later. But I think we'll always, that is something which is in our vision. We want to see if we can get someday listed in a overseas stock market.
Okay, so that can be a very exciting news for our viewers as well, I guess. And also, why can't we in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, have another exchange, like a technically savvy exchange like Nasdaq or the Indian Stock Exchange? Now these markets are more technically savvy, and they are welcoming, and they are catering to this new generation of companies, especially in the technical arena. and with the technology arena. So do you think that can be helpful for us as well, or we are okay with Colombo Stock Exchange?
My thinking is still our market is too small to have another exchange. I think we should focus on developing what we have in hand. But if you look at the turnovers, our turnovers are, I think, compared to all what you say, the markets you are referring to must be very small. We are doing 1 or 2 billion turnover. Maybe January we had about 10-15 billion turnover. So I think our turnovers all that too small to create another market. I think we should focus on what we have and maybe develop it, maybe make it more technologically advanced. But I don't recommend another market because I think we are still a small country, a smaller market.
Okay. And in this country we are talking about, if I take your attention to the port city project, which is by far like maybe after Mahaveli, as you mentioned in the beginning, the biggest development project we are seeing. How will this affect the businesses in Sri Lanka and the stock market per se?
Well, I think for once, I think the port city will have helped to bring in a lot of foreign exchange already, because developing that, creating that mass land will have cost a lot of billions of dollars. So already a lot of foreign exchange will have come in, and we are always looking for FDI. Companies which have, the countries which have grown with a lot of FDI. So already some great level of FDI will have come through it, and then the company which has done all this, I am sure will make sure some strong FDIs, some big FDIs will come into the port city, because still the success is when the more companies come in, the development which takes place, still only the land is developed. So I think with the port city, I feel lot of FDI will come in, because the Chinese company which did this, I am sure must be having a plan to bring in FDIs, otherwise they won't invest so much money into reclaiming so much of land. So I am sure there are a lot of FDIs will come in. So if FDIs come in, definitely it's going to help the country. And when the country economy grows, I think the companies in Sri Lanka will also benefit from the economic growth. So I see a positive in it. I see there will be a economic growth due to the port city.
Okay, with all these developments, what is the future holds for Vidullanka and the energy sector, renewable energy sector? What does future holds for you?
Well, renewable energy, all over the world there is a lot of attention on renewable energy, because it is clean, it is environmental friendly, and today everybody is concerned about the environmental change to protect the environment. So I think our industry naturally is in a situation where it supports the protection of mother nature. So because of it, I think there's a lot of interest in it. So being in this industry with so much interest in it, I'm sure the industry will grow and company also should grow. In Sri Lanka, if you look particularly, President has in his policy declared that he wants to have 70% renewable energy power generation by 2030. Now to achieve that target, there's going to be quite a lot of capacity development in renewable energy. So I'm sure being forefront in the renewable energy, we will be very much involved in this capacity building. So with that, I'm sure the company is going to grow quite a bit. So I see a very bright future.
Great. So what about the resources in the country? How does that help your business model in renewable energy? Do we have enough resources, or do we have enough and more to grow even further?
When you say resources, there is a technical expertise. That resource, the manpower and the technical know-how, I think we have. I don't think we have a shortage of that, and I think if you look at the industry like hydropower, I think we have great amount of expertise, because we have developed over 200 projects in Sri Lanka over the last 20 years. And I think that is what has helped many of our Sri Lankan hydropower developers to go overseas also and develop projects and perform well. So I think we have the capability in terms of hydropower. Then in terms of solar and wind, which are the next big thing, and those are becoming more cost competitive than other renewables, and those also I think we have the expertise. There's no rocket science in it, so I think the expertise we have. So I think the next what we need is the financial resources. So I think with all what you are doing, I'm sure the market will really boost, and then we'll be able to raise more money in the market.
Great. So what do you have to say to your investors and investors of the Colombo Stock Exchange as a whole?
My advice to them will be, okay, to invest cautiously, and like I said earlier, invest for industries which you know of, and we always be in touch with those industries what you're investing, so you know what is happening in those. So invest cautiously and invest for cash flow, where you are investing companies which have a decent dividend stream but also with some potential for growth. So take calculated risk, I'm sure you will succeed.
And also, as an experienced businessman who raised capital through the stock market, if I may ask, what advice you would give to companies who will be planning to be listed on the stock exchange in the future? What kind of advice you would give them?
I think my advice would be to go for IPO at the right time when the valuations are higher, because then you can raise more money and less dilution. But same time, you need to be fair to the new investors who are going to come in. So have a proper growth plan, make them aware, and raise money because you believe that the company can grow, and make good use of that money, not just to settle some debt. So go and raise money if you have a good plan and you feel you can do a good justice to those money which you are raising, then go for it.
Do you think this is the right time for new companies to be listed?
I think still our valuations are low, because I believe our P ratios are in the region of 10, 11. I think there were certain figures put out talking about 14, but I think it should be around 10, 11, because the new earnings and recent past, the market drop in market price is not considered. So if you look at that sort of a PE, compare with the region where India may be about 25, Singapore may be about 40, I think our valuations are still low. But so you will not get a great price, but still if you are confident the money you are going to raise, you can do justice and you can give a good return to the shareholders, you can go for it. But at the moment, valuation is not that great.
Okay, so on contrast, now if the valuations are not so great, do you think this is a good time for investors to come into the market and probably invest in fundamentally strong stocks? And what is the potential for them?
I think definitely yes, because today you can borrow around 7-8%. So I think with the market you can get a better return. There are fundamentally good strong stocks. So only thing is we have to get over these pandemics. I think once there's certainty about how this COVID can be overcome, I'm sure the market will boost. So I think it's a good time to invest, even borrow and invest. I think it's a very good time.
All right, great. So thank you very much, Riyaz, for being with us today. It's a great privilege for us to have you here with Market Insight today. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here.
And thank you for watching Market Insight, and we sincerely hope that with today's discussion we were able to give you some great insight for you to make informed investment decisions.